2002 Ford F350 dually rear brake pads and rotor replacement. I'm Brian Esslick from How To Automotive, and I'm going to walk you through that process. So we're going to start by getting her up in the air with jacks and jack stands and remove the rear wheel. Next, we're going to remove the two 12mm bolts here and here on the caliper, and take the caliper off and set it on top of the rotor. After you get the caliper off, now we need to get the caliper bracket off. And on the back side, there's going to be two 18mm nuts or bolts. So you're going to remove the one here and the one there. So after you get the caliper bracket off, now we need to take out the axle. To do that, you're going to remove all these 15mm bolts right here and set those aside, and then the axle will slide out and set it aside. You're going to need a little bucket to catch a little bit of the gear oil that's going to leak out when you do this. So go ahead and set the other side. Next, you need to remove this lock washer or nut here. This is a special nut that holds the rear end or the rotor on, and you're going to need a socket like this with a 4-plonger that fits in the tabs, and you turn it off. If you don't have that, what you can use is you can take a screwdriver or a punch like this, and you can put it in here, and you can strike it around and spin it around with the hammer and punch, and it'll come all the way off. Now that you got the bearing loose, or the lock nut loose, pull it out, and inside is a bearing, so you can pull the whole rotor towards you, and then pull the bearing out and set aside. Now that we got the rotor off and the hub assembly, we're going to take out all the 15s here, and then the rotor itself will come off the hub. And this is the setup we're going to use to take those bolts out with an impact gun with a 15mm socket and a little extension. Okay, now that we've got the rotor off, we need to get the seal out. And to do that, the easiest way to do that is to just take it and flip it over upside down like this, and take a seal driver like this that fits all the way through there. And what you're going to do is you're going to put it on the bearing on the inside over here and smack it on the bearing, and it'll pop the bearing and the seal out on the other side. So when you lift it off, it'll look just like that. So now you can flip it back over, and then we're going to clean the surface up here, put our bearing back in, and put our new seal on. Now that you got your seal reinstalled, and you can use the proper fitting seal driver and hammer it in. After you get that done, now what we're going to do is we're going to put a little blue Loctite thread sealer on the bolts that held the rotor onto the hub, and that acts like a glue to help prevent the bolts from vibrating back out. So we're going to reinstall all of our bolts all the way around, and we're going to tighten with our impact gun. So we're going to go one here, one across, one here, like that, in a star pattern, and tighten them all up. So now that I got the rotor bolted up, I'm going to pick it up and slide it over the hub here, and I'm going to check my park brake adjustment. If it's too loose, then I'll adjust the little star below here a couple clicks. You have to take it on and off to do this, so you have to take it back off, adjust it a couple clicks, put it back on, check it, spin it for the drag, and then you just want a light little drag. You don't want them super tight. And then after that, go ahead and reinstall your bearing, and you're going to put the nut back on and start tightening it up. And when you put the nut on, it has this little hash mark that has to line up with the hash mark on the end of the axle tube here. So you'll put that on in there, and then you'll start the threads, and you'll tighten it up. If you have the socket, it's really easy. You just tighten it up so it stops, like a snug fit, and then you maybe back it off with a hair. If not, you have to use the chisel and the hammer version, and you'll do it until you'll chisel it around until it stops, and then maybe knock it off like one little hair clip just to loosen it up. You don't want the bearings over tight or burn them up. Now that the nut is tight, you can go ahead and put the blue Loctite on the bolts, on the thread locker on the bolts that held the axle in, and we're going to slide the axle in. And on the axle, it has this little rubber seal that will seal in here. So you'll line it up and then start all your bolts and tighten them down. I use the impact gun to do that too. Okay, now that the axle is all bolted up, I'm going to take off my old clips that were my caliper bracket here, transfer the new ones onto it, I'm also going to take these pins out and slide them out, and I'm going to put a little bit of Seal Glide grease on the pins to make sure that they slide back and forth nice and smooth. And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to put a little blue Loctite back on the bolt that held it on and bolt it back up with the 18mm nut here, or bolt, and tighten it all down. So when you pull these pins out, it'll look just like that. They'll just pull straight out. And once you get them out, then you can clean them up, wipe off the old grease, and then put a fresh layer of new grease on and slide them back in and make sure they slide back and forth. Now that you got the caliper bracket back on, you can go ahead and put your new pads into the bracket. And I like to use a little of this Seal Glide brake grease, especially designed for brakes. It's a synthetic base or a silicone base, and spread a little dollop on the inner and outer pads on the outer shims, and that helps reduce squeaking and vibration. After you got the pads in the caliper brackets, now we need to press the pistons back in. I use a piston tool like this, and it kind of works like a caulking gun. You squeeze it and it pushes the pistons in. But when I do it, I don't open the bleeder screw, and so what that does is it pushes a little bit of the fluid back into the master cylinder. So you want to also check and make sure it's not over full. So after you push your pistons back in, you're going to put your caliper back on and bolt it up, and you're going to put the blue Loctite on the 12mm bolts that you that held the caliper on. And after that, now that you got the wheels bolted back up and torqued down, one of the last steps we're going to do is we're going to crawl underneath and check the differential fluid, because we lost a little bit, so we're going to top it off. To top off the differential, you're just going to pull the little plug that's on the back of the differential cover, pull it off the top plug, and you're going to fill it up with gear oil until it lightly runs out, flows out. And that's it, and you're going to put the plug back in, tighten it back up. Now that you got the differential topped off, you can go ahead and lower your vehicle down. And the most important step is to pump the brake pedal before you drive, where you're going to pump all the fluid back into the master cylinders, or back into the caliper. And after pumping the pedal 5 or 6 times and you don't have a solid firm pedal, which you should, then you may have to bleed the brakes, and that pretty much completes the rear brake pads and rotor replacement on a 2002 Ford F350. I'm Brian Essick from Automotive. I'd like to thank you for watching my videos and remind you to subscribe for more valuable videos like this. Thank you again.